So as of July 1st, 2020, the NBA is still scheduled to come back. And what that means is that teams are reporting, and the Sixers are in Camden. They're back in Camden. And Brett Brown spoke to the media today. I didn't like what I heard. I'm going to get right to it. Allow me to kind of ease my way into it as to why I do not like what I heard from Brett Brown already. And what I believe highlights one of his major flaws as a coach. I'm going to try to be detailed, but also try to get to my point very quickly. So bear with me. In order to be a good leader as a coach, you have to have direction and precision. And you have to be able to communicate effectively. And I think that Brett Brown does a horrible job at that. I think he does a horrible job at that. What made me think this was, I was on Twitter. Unfortunately, I tried to reach out to a couple people on the Sixers to get the entirety of Brett Brown's media availability, but nobody responded. So I'm just going off of the quotes that I've seen and articles that I've read. And it feels like some of the Sixers beat writers kind of feel the same way I feel as far as the answers that he gave, at least as far as them being very open-ended and very ambiguous, and not really saying anything in detail. But back to my point, a good leader has to have direction, clarity, precision, all those things. You have to be able to communicate effectively. And Brett Brown today was asked specifically about Shake Milton's role with the restart, as well as Al Horford's role in the restart. And let me start off with the Al Horford part. Now, I don't have the quotes up right now to read them off, so I'm going off the top of my head. But essentially, in the most roundabout Brett Brown way, he gave a huge, I kind of don't know, I kind of know, when they asked about what Horford's role will be. Will he be starting? Will he be going back to the bench like they did in that, I want to say February 11th or 12th game against the Clippers, that they won at home when they moved Horford to the bench? They asked him about that. I referenced that game because that was the last time that the Sixers were healthy, because Ben got injured, and that changed the status of the lineup due to health. And he said something to the effect of, well, there's a team Al and a team Joel, and you figure out how it works apart and how it works together. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You had 3 months off. 3 months off to watch every Sixers game twice, to see what has worked, to see what has not worked. And this is the problem. And I try to sit back and I try to say, okay, I don't mind there being a level of open-mindedness. I don't mind there being a level of fluidity when it comes to setting lineups. I understand you're coming off of 3.5, 4 months of not playing basketball. So guys might come in different. Some guys might come in a certain shape. I understand that. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to that. But you got to understand me. My problem is that it's easy to go that route and to say, oh, well, he needs to have a little wiggle room and all that. Look, you're a coach. You have the right to change your mind. One thing I don't do is I don't hold it against a coach if he decides to change his mind off of what he says because he tried what he said he was going to do and it just didn't work. I have no problem with that. But the reason why I know this is a problem, and it's not just an issue of the quotes that come out, is because you look at the players and look at things that players have said over the last couple of years. Just think about it. It could be Glenn Robinson III. It could be Tobias Harris. It could be Al Horford. It could be JJ Redick. It could be Jimmy Butler. It could be Joel Embiid. Players have over and over talked about the lack of clarity when it comes to the role, the game plan, and what they're trying to do. So it's not just my interpretation of Brett Brown in sound bites and quotes. No, this is something that I see him talking about, that I see that takes place on the court, and is further cemented by the opinions of players who actually play with him and deal with him directly. So it's not just me coming out of my head and saying, oh, Brett Brown doesn't know what he's doing. No, I hear these things, I see these things, and I see players say things. He doesn't know what he's doing. There is no level of clarity when it comes to his direction of what he wants to do. And that's why when you go back to February, when we traded with the Warriors and brought in Alec Burks and Glenn Robinson III, I believe it was GR3 that was the one that was complaining, talking about he didn't know his role. So if you're planning on moving Al Horford to the bench, and me, I want to take Brett Brown. Brett Brown, he seems to be, emphasis on seems to be a pretty honest guy, and with what he says. So if he's not telling us definitively that Al Horford's coming off of the bench, when that relays through the media and throughout the rest of the sports world, I don't take that as to say that he told Al Horford that he's going to be coming off the bench. So, assuming that the message is consistent, that he doesn't know, how is it that you have 3 weeks to get ready for basketball to come back and there's no clear-cut direction? That's the problem. When you're talking about the idea of Shake Milton, who was balling out, you had everything to see from Shake and what he could do. And you're talking about the idea of, between, you have this thing between Shake and Alec Burks. And look, I understand. Shake only did that for a small pocket of time. But you have to have some type of level of direction, and this is the problem with this team. There is no concise direction when it comes to Brett Brown and how he conveys roles, and that is why we mess up. You talk about, you have Brett as your point guard, but then you want to allow Shake to come in and, kind of be a backup, and Shake has his hand up in the competition. Like, what do you mean Shake has his hand up? Does he have the job or not? Is he the backup point guard or not? Is he starting or not? How are guys supposed to settle into their roles? I believe it's like, look, I'm rooting for the Sixers. I hope that things turn around and I hope it works out. But if they do not, it is hard for me to believe that these things do not play a direct role in the failure of the team. How can guys fit into their role? You've had enough time to watch every game twice. You've had enough time to go back and watch every game that Alec Burks and Glenn Robinson III played this year. How can you not have a clear-cut direction as of yet? It makes no sense to me. If you have a clear-cut direction, he is well within his rights to change his mind at any point. At any point, he could change his mind. But I don't understand this idea of you've been off for 3.5 months and you don't know, you don't have clarity, when all you've had is time to watch film. You don't have to travel anywhere. You don't have to go anywhere. You can get your food and your groceries delivered. You've been in the house the whole time. What have you been doing? How do you not have an answer? And if you don't have an answer for us, I have to take you at your word and believe that you don't have an answer for the players. So how is Shake supposed to know what he's supposed to be doing? Am I the starting point guard? Am I the backup point guard? Am I still in competition with Alec Burks? Al Horford? Am I playing in the starting lineup? Am I playing behind Joel Embiid? Are we alternating minutes and playing just a couple minutes together? How are players supposed to perform at their optimal level if they don't have the direction? These guys are professionals, but they're not robots. Guys have to be able to understand their role so they can star in their role. But how can guys star in their role if they don't know their role? And that's my issue with Brett Brown. I'm taking him for his word, and I actually believe him in what he says, and that he is conveying somewhat of a similar message between the media and the public and the players. But given that honesty that I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt of having, that to me is a huge problem, because you have these players coming back. They have to have direction. That's a huge thing in this league. Guys just don't come in. Like, we could talk about guys being professionals, but like I said, they are not robots. Guys have to have a direction. The last 2 years, Ben Simmons has been the point guard all year. 2018, what happened against Boston? It hit the fan against Boston. All of a sudden, Ben was moved off the ball. What happened last year? Ben has the ball the whole year. All of a sudden, Jimmy has the ball. Ben gets moved off the ball. Lack of understanding your position and your role will always lead to your downfall. That's all.